Welcome, everyone, to the Maple Syrup Mandos podcast, the first episode. My name is Anthony. I've been playing Legion for about 4 years, and the primary faction I play is Gar. I'll give it to someone else.
I'm Jacob. Anthony, fun fact, Anthony, the first time we recorded this podcast, said he played for 2.5 years, which we then corrected him on. It was a lot funnier. Maybe we'll release that podcast one day. But anyway,
we're not releasing that.
Well, no, we should. I think it was funny. Anyway, my name's Blaze. He had a camera. It's broken now. We're just rolling with it. I'm Jacob. I've been playing Legion for about 2.5 years, almost 3 years. I'm primarily a Rebel player, but have recently been breaking into Republic.
I'm Paul. I've been playing Legion since 2020, so about five years. And I've played pretty much exclusively CIS.
Hey, I'm Blaze. I play exclusively Empire. I've been playing Legion for about 4 years. I think Anthony and I started around the same time. I think we started right about when Shadow Collective was first released, right?
I think Yoda was brand new because your first game was with Yoda and you won, and then you never played Republic again.
Yeah.
I think Yoda had been out for like a month at that point.
For sure. Figured I'd leave it on a high note.
Yeah,
But,
100% win rate is Republic.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah, so for the Maple Syrup Mandos podcast, all of us play in Burlington, Vermont, so in our local scene. We also play in regional tournaments in Montreal and Boston, mostly, Boston, Massachusetts. And we wanted to start a podcast for the new version of Legion after a year, and then all the physical products are out. All of us have been played extensively in the old edition, in tournaments competitively, and in locals every week. And all of us have had challenges with adapting to the new game. And as we've been talking about it, I think we've realized that some of that is that we're still operating with assumptions from the old game that may not be true anymore. So one of the goals of this podcast, at least as we start, is to look at things that are fundamental to Legion that we might be having some assumptions from the old game and brushing up on them. We hope that by recording and talking about this in a podcast, we can improve our own skills as well as yours, and give you ideas for how to approach the game, whether you're an experienced player from the old edition who's jumping back in with the new rules or struggling with the new rules, or you're a brand new player. We hope that we can get better at the game with you. And then part of our mission statement is that we're going to try not to be like a reaction and news podcast. A lot of podcasts cover that right now, and we want to be consistent in trying to offer like strategy and tactics whenever we record that are agnostic to whatever the current like balance state of the game is. So like, Wookiees might not be good right now, but we think that you should be able to play lists and know how to play that unit and have strategies for how to use them if you want to, or if they're good in a future update.
Anyway, I think that we're sort of qualified for this conversation, or to add ourselves to the conversation for a couple reasons. Well, first, we all play and have consistently played different factions throughout the course of the game. I think we all bring something to the table in that regard. We love the Notorious Scoundrels. We're huge fans of Mike Berry and Evan Paul. We appreciate what they added to the conversation. But a lot of the voices out there, the prominent voices, are Republic-centric, let's just say. So we also in our local have like a very prominent Shadow Collective player. So in that respect, I think we do come at it from all different angles. And second, we're fairly competitive players. I think Paul especially recently won the Saint Laurent Open. Came in second at at that same tournament a couple years ago, and has won a majority of like the big New England tournaments in the last few years.
Well, and I think winning aside, we all have a competitive mindset. It doesn't really matter. Like, if you're going to a tournament and your goal is to win games, we all go to tournaments with a goal to win games and have fun. But like, so we all have a similar mindset of how we approach the game.
And because we're friends, like in real life, outside of just Legion, we'll often just
Let's not get hasty.
All right, Blaze. Blaze and I. So to be clear, I hang out with Anthony very frequently, several times a week. We go to the gym together and go out to dinner sometimes. It's very sweet. And we'll often be talking about Legion just while we're doing stuff. Sorry, Anthony. Anthony's our editor, by the way, so anything we have to cut is ultimately a problem for him. I hung out with Paul outside occasionally, and then Blaze. We probably hung out once, maybe. But we're friends outside of Legion, and we'll always just be talking while hanging out. It just comes up because it's like all of our like pretty much number one hobby at this juncture. So I think that's why I find it interesting for us to talk about this in addition to what Paul has indicated.
What we want to talk about list building is the process for how you can make a list that is competitive, or that it accomplishes what you want it to do in a competitive setting. So we're thinking particularly about lists that you're planning on bringing to an event that would be 3 to 5 or more games, and you have to play that list for all those games. And that will come in, we'll talk about it, like that affects how you make a list versus like making a list that you're going to play once at like a local night, and then you might change to something different the next week. Yeah, so do we want to talk about how each of us, because I don't know what this looks like for you guys, like how do you make a list? Like where do you start?
What I'll typically start with whatever. I think we're all Star Wars fans at some level. Obviously, I'm a huge Star Wars fan, and I nerd out over certain characters, and so I'll be like really into a certain character from like a certain show or a movie that I recently watched, and I'm like, all right, how can I make this existing character to work in the game, because I want to like play with them. So it's like I'll start with like a character, and I'm like, all right, well, what does this character do well in Legion? So I think the character I've brought the most to tournaments, I'll just use Ahsoka as an example. With Ahsoka, I'll be like, all right, what works well with Ahsoka? What is she good at? What units pair well with her? So I'll start with that, and put in. She needs, in my opinion, right in the new rules of the game, it's not worth taking Ahsoka if you're not taking Sabine. I think their teamwork 2-pip that gives them the free moves is excellent. They're both super fast, great objective players, in addition to Ahsoka being reasonably hard-hitting. So, like, okay, there's my operatives. What commanders could I take that make them better? It's like, okay, well, Ahsoka really wants dodges. What characters can help me improve Ahsoka's attack ability and defensive capabilities? And it's like, all right, Princess Leia is the best at that right now in Rebels. She's great at giving out dodges. Can inspire suppression off of Sabine, because Sabine is only 2 courage. So that's sort of where I'll start, and then from there, it's like, okay, what units also are really, make up for some of the weaknesses of those characters, and and I'll keep building from there. So like sleeper cells are great, because Sabine and Mandalorians, if I'm taking Sabine, I'm throwing in Clan Ren, right? But the problem is Clan Ren and Sabine, they're taking up some very important slots. And they're not really that hard hitting. They're objective play units.
So let's think about like the starting point for you, Jacob, is you pick a character that you like, usually for thematic reasons, and then you layer on synergies onto them, and then you start filling out the rest of the list.
Exactly.
Anthony,
That's how I do it.
What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I feel like that's kind of how I do, or how I begin to build this as well. Like, I usually start with or I usually try to figure out what the centerpiece of my list is going to be. Be that a commander, an operative, or sometimes a heavy, right? What is going to be like the unit that is going to define my list and how I'm going to approach the game with that list. So, like, if I'm bringing Vader, I might want to think of some units that would benefit from having, like, new ways to motivate them as an ability, like dewbacks, or even like the Imperial Officer with like tip of the spear. It benefits from that extra action economy off that card. But yeah, all of my lists usually start with the centerpiece of my army, be that, you know, an operative, a commander, or a heavy, for sure.
I'm gonna jump in. So I don't know what it is for you, Anthony, but for me it's similar. I guess the way that I would describe it is I take like a core synergy that I want to build my list around. I don't always. I mean, usually I'm taking it's usually like one or two units that are like the hammer in the army, and it doesn't have to be an offensive hammer. I guess it's like the bulk of the points are here. This is like, if you were to define my list, it's going to be a lot of abilities centering around a commander or two commanders and like some units that go with them. But I think like the main idea is like there's a synergy that I want to sort of exploit, not in like an unfair way, but I want to try and use that to its maximum potential. So like a list that I've been messing around with recently is like Poggle and B2s, and it's like I want to exploit Poggle's 4-pip to respawn B2s because I think it's cool. I think it's like partially thematic, like Jacob was talking about, and then I want to see how far can I push that in the game. And I think none of those individual B2s, or Poggle especially, are like a centerpiece unit. But in aggregate, that synergy becomes like a major part of my list. And then from there, I sort of layer on additional things that I think will work well with that core part of my army, or that core idea. Usually it is like a Count Dooku, who's like 240 points. He's the whole thing, and then I pick things that either benefit from him or benefit him. Like it's one way or the other, or both at the same time, if it's like a keyword like teamwork or something.
I'm kind of in that space too, like having a centerpiece and then finding a synergy of like things I think might be good with them, or also just a combination of what is currently like good in my list or what could be good, and seeing if that works with them. Like I've been playing a lot of Yoda arcs, and I think the synergy has always been pretty good with them, even back in the old rules and the new rules. It's only been benefited. But I usually try to start with a statement piece of like, all right, do I want this to be like an Anakin army or super melee focus, or is it like kind of a ranged attack with like Obi-Wan and or Yoda? So it's giving me more ways to experiment, but partially it's kind of it also goes by playstyle too. I more enjoy playing more cagey and safe, so that also helps me in like my list building archetype.
Yeah, I think playstyle is important too. Like I'm usually picking lists that are a playstyle that I feel confident with, or I think is like generally good in the current rules. So like if I think close range units are good, which I think they are right now, a lot of my lists are going to start with like I need a close range core, not core unit, but like a core of my army. Blaze, I have a note here. Which is about net listing, because you're a pretty prodigious net lister. Do you have anything to say about that, about the allegations?
I can confirm I love a good net list. I'm an unabashed plagiarist. Yeah, I don't know. I every now and then I just kind of cruise through Longshanks and look at some larger tournaments and kind of just pull lists off of like the top 8 for a lot of tournaments.
What's the last list you made yourself? Like
The last list?
Yeah. What did you made yourself?
Dog, it's been years. The list that I brought to Ironweld, that was all me.
Yeah, how do you do with that iron weld?
Poorly.
I think Blaze often pulls, like, I would say probably 90% of a list off of the internet, and you may tweak some small things, like, say, adding an extra emergency transponder. That's a reference. So you might, like, add a couple things. I don't think there's anything wrong with that from a competitive standpoint. Like, I think we'll probably circle back to this at some point, but, like, you want to know how to play it. If you can't understand what this list is supposed to do and you see it won a tournament, you could play it, like, you could learn how to play it, but you shouldn't expect to see immediate results. If it is, like, units that you're familiar with and it's using, and you can clearly see, okay, I had never thought of using this ability in that way, like, go ahead, pull it. Yeah, there's nothing wrong with, like, pulling a list off the internet and modifying it or running it wholesale, because other people are going to see things that you don't.
Yeah, I've done it too. Like I played a lot of like Yoda arcs with the Relentless card, Padme, Anakin Exemplar, Sheriff Pikes when it came out. So I'm also a perpetrator of copying lists, but
Yep.
I think it's also just like what is strong, and I do want to play what's strong, but obviously it takes a while. It's not super easy where you just put it in and pilot it. The Anakin Padme list is pretty easy to pilot.
You mean the Legacy Legion Anakin Padme?
Yeah, where you're able to share surges and dodges with everyone with Anakin and Padme, back when Anakin was just a battery. So that's a pretty easy pilotable list that anyone could really do. I think the Yoda list actually was a lot of people are doing that.
It was harder.
It was a lot harder.
Legion and today, it's harder.
Yeah. I think people play Yoda arcs and commandos now. It's a little easier, but Yoda still has a bit of finesse because he's a very expensive piece that requires a bit of finesse.
Okay. So we talked about how you start a list, and we talked about basically the idea of filling out a list. So we're sort of in agreement that you pick a sort of arbitrarily, maybe thematically, you pick something that you are interested in exploiting, and you start filling out your list. So I would, I'm just throwing out a kind of, I'm making this up, but like a number of like, I would say like 400-ish points to like 500 is what I'm like dedicating a gimmick to, if that makes sense. Like, if my gimmick is Poggle and B2s are like 88 with the heavy, Poggle's like 55, and I want to bring 4 of them to get max value, that's like 450 points. I often I'm not super comfortable with the idea of going beyond that, unless the synergy is like super good. Basically, I often don't want my whole list to be so into my gimmick that if I can't pull off that gimmick, my list sort of crumbles. We'll talk more about that when we talk about skews and stuff.
The gimmick for your list is like getting B2s back on the board that like your enemy has killed, essentially, and playing the 4-pip, which is a very slow card, right, to get B2s back on the board.
Yeah, and it's not always practical. And that's true, I think, with almost every synergy in the game. Is that they look really good on paper. All of them are good. It's good to have units that support each other, but there are going to be points in a game where units cannot support each other, and I think you want parts of your army to be able to function on their own. That means like without order tokens, without token sharing, or without access to the full like salvo. And I think you can run into traps in list building in that you create a core of your army that's like 900 points, and then you play Breakthrough and you have to split your army up, and then it's like, well, what do I do? Like, my army is going to be fundamentally weakened by being split up because they all need to be close to each other, typically, to trigger those abilities. Like Jacob said, I think you were getting into this with Sleeper Cell. You then start trying to fill out units that either supplement the synergy, but then at some point you also, I think, want to cover your weaknesses too. So like if I have Ahsoka and Sabine and Sleeper Cells and I'm like really all in on this close quarters concept, I would probably be looking, for me at least when I'm building a list, like maybe something that can fire at range 3 or 4 to strip a standby, or to just put something down in the early, in like round 1 or 2 before like those guys get close. That's kind of harder to call, and we might want to wait a little bit to talk more about skews and how deep you should go into like specialization.
I was just going to add, I think you always want to be, for, when you're building around these core concepts, as, Paul's been indicating, is there is some, you do need to, if you do not have a plan for your unit, like if your unit does not function within your plan either as like, oh, this is just covers a weakness of mine, let's say, in a lot of my rebel lists where I'm taking like a hero hammer sort of situation, I'm like, oh, I don't really have, like, yeah, I guess Ahsoka could kind of like chop up some vehicles if necessary, but I can't really count on her charging into a vehicle. That's not really a good plan to deal with vehicles. So, on at least one of my rebel troopers, I'll put like their ion gun or something. It's like, or I'll take ATRTs with laser cannons, as some of my like supplemental units. So I think if you're not, and it's often why, like, when you're trying to pick out characters, it's, I'll use an example. I see a lot of new players, they just want to put, their favorite characters on the table, and that's all well and good, and you can probably make anything work, but, an example I like to use is, there was one list I made pretty early on while I was playing in Old Legion, where I was trying to make Din Djarin and Ahsoka work together, and they really didn't. They were, at the time, they were both good units, but they both are very. They both want to be centerpieces and are very greedy with their orders, and certainly at the time in the game, there was not a way to like get them both orders consistently. And they don't really have any synergies whatsoever, because Ahsoka can't issue Din any orders because she's not a mercenary, etc. So if you do not have a plan on how they work within your army, you should just build a different army or include something else. There's enough in the game to where you can find a synergy that works better, and you could,
Yes.
you don't have to put all your favorite characters or all your favorite synergy ideas into the same list.
Yes, yeah, I think every faction has combos of characters or units that work. Like there's almost maybe like some of the heavy units don't have that, but like outside of that, there's almost always something you could bring that supports that unit. You can evaluate whether or not you think the unit needs that support, but yeah, there's lots of complex ways you can bring stuff together. I guess I wanted to like briefly just look at like what does that actually look like from a process for like a viewer, like what does that look like? So I'm going to pull up Tabletop Admiral here. I'm just going to show like physically what do I do when I make a list. Is this the best way? I don't know. Usually what I do is I'm like, all right, I want to play Count Dooku, and sort of what we've been talking about. I want to play. I'll just sort of bring up the same general list that I had earlier that I brought to a tournament. I have Count Dooku and Cad Bane, and the concept I have here is that, like, Count Dooku has cunning, he has direct trooper, so if I put underworld connections on him, he can give an order to Bane. So then I have 2 units, they synergize well together, in my opinion. And then I think one thing that we haven't talked about is, like, I basically want to then aim for a minimum order count. So usually what I'll do is I will literally be like, let's add units until I get to the order count I want. And at this point, I'm only adding upgrades. If I'm adding upgrades, it's because I think they're necessary, like Electro Gauntlets and the Aqua Heavies. and then I'm going back and I am like plugging in. I'm just plugging in stuff until I hit. And you guys can chime in on what you think. I think if you're not hitting 11, you should like think about the list you're making. You should have a reason to go under 11. That's my opinion. I don't know if you guys have a thought.
That's interesting. I never like thought of it. I always like put the characters I want and then what they could be substituted for or like what could be good. And I don't even think about activation count until after I have finished a list of because then I have like all right, then I can like move things around. So I play like a Yoda arc list. So it has like that's a lot of money into arcs. It's like 90 points into 3 arcs. So like, I could lose one to add like a Jedi Knight, and that gets me like 10 activations or so, or 11 activations. And I think that's for me like activations don't matter up until I can figure out if I think the list.
So
would be good.
you get all the units you want, and then you try and fill out as many activations as you can get broadly. You know?
Yeah, without feeling too weak, yeah, pretty much. It's like
I mean, obviously, like you probably should not bring 5 naked B1s just to get to 10 activations. If all the rest of your you probably should actually with most CIS lists.
Yeah,
but that's probably not true for like Republic. It may not be true for every faction.
You talk about activation counts too, like 11. 11 is pretty hard to get in with Gar at least.
Right.
So like activation counts really
has been.
Yeah, so like I back in the old Legion playing like 8 activations. I think now comfortably people can play like 10 activations in Gar, which is like a new thing. 11's kind of 11 and 12 are also possible. But you're pretty thin spread out. So I think with like say
Is that true? Are most of your Republic lists 10 activations?
Yeah. I know Jacob's is 10.
Okay.
Mine's 10. Mine's currently 11, but like, yeah, I
So
think
it might differ a little bit by faction. Blaze, what are you landing at for Empire?
I'm averaging like 13, dude.
Yeah, that's what. And Rebels is probably similar. I was actually making some Rebel lists the other day, but
I'll say I tend to, Tony mentioned, my competitive Republic list right now is 10 activations. Most of my competitive Rebel lists were between 12 and 13 in the current version of the game. I think what I tend to do is I focus less on like activation count's important. I get to the point where I'm like, all right, how many activations do I have right now that actually contribute to my game plan? Yeah. And I think in Republic, especially like it's very hard to eke out activations. I don't want to do activations for the sake of getting activations, because if all I end up with is like naked clone troopers that aren't really going to contribute to the fight at all, there starts to become diminishing returns. So I like for a majority of my army to be like central to like the game plan of whatever the objectives are, whatever the combat situation is, and then leave like 2 or 3 activations that are maybe like either filler activations or like very light support activations. But I mean, it's important. I tend to throughout Legion's history, I've tended to always be like 1 activation or 2 activations shy of whatever is like the contemporary contemporary average. I like to play. I think my play styles. I like to play with a smaller amount of elite units.
And I think Republic. Yeah, I think you guys are right. Like Republic is going to have to go lower. Like so I guess for me as CIS, if I'm below, I've never made a CIS list that's below 11. I guess I should say. I don't think there's a lot of reasons in my faction to do that because of how cheap our activations are and how good they are, like how much they actually scale positively when you bring like a bunch of naked B1s. Your order control is great. So yeah, and I agree with the premise like that activation should have a point. They should be adding something to your list beyond just being a unit. Beyond just like sometimes you're going to have like 2 or 3 naked B1s, but even though then they're helping your order control and you have a plan to get them on an objective. It's not always true. I mean, some people are playing these huge like activation count lists that are like 14 isn't actually that big. I'm talking like 15, 16 activation lists. They haven't had crazy success, although I think it's because they kind of aren't very fun to play with or against.
Isn't there a 22 like echo-based defender list
It's
now?
possible. Yeah, it's possible if you bring 6 naked vets and 6 Mark IIs.
But I'm like, what do you do with like 6 vets and 6 Mark IIs? Like, I don't get what you do with them and all that.
Swarm the point is what you do. You just like swarm objectives and outnumber your opponent, and then you wear them down with like crazy amounts of chip damage.
Yeah, if I played against that, I would.
I think Blaze, your opinion on this will be interesting because you play Empire, and Empire has, I would say, units that generally do all the rest of us are playing factions where if you bring naked core units, they generally contribute something that's beyond their offensive profile. That doesn't feel like it's true for Empire. Don't really have units that support your army at all in the core slot or any cheap unit that does that.
Yeah, no, for sure. There was definitely a time where I didn't feel that, or I really liked bringing naked core just as just bullet sponges, raw bodies to like dump on a point, like Paul was talking about with those giant with like giant echo based defender lists and that kind of thing. I really don't think that was a super effective strategy, in Empire at least, as far as like the effective health that you're getting for like the 40 something points that a naked stormtroopers cost. I don't think that's a really viable strategy. I think you are way better off with strapping a heavy onto those units and having them actually contribute something to the to your offensive output. So yeah, in Empire, I wouldn't advise bringing naked core, just because you end up with at least not stormtroopers and more snow troopers, shore troopers.
We're talking about like the big super squatted stormtroopers of like the T-21.
That's not like a pad activation at that point. It's like 90 points.
I wouldn't even really call it like a naked activation.
Yeah, it's not naked.
I'm just talking about like the 4-man.
Yeah.
No upgrades.
But I think that supports the idea that we're sort of in consensus on, which I actually wasn't actually. You guys have put it in a way, which is that you should be trying to hit a high like there are a lot of benefits of having high activations, going last, having more units on points to score, and distributing your wounds across multiple units is generally good. It makes it harder for your opponent to wipe your list if you've got lots of different little guys running around because you got to split all those attacks up. But you don't generally want units that you have no idea what they're actually adding to your list beyond that number at the start of the game that says I have 12 and you have 11, and they're like and just sitting on a point isn't usually enough. B1s feel like they do that. However, the order control on B1s is like a sort of passive thing that they're adding. So that contributes, and they're also cheaper than any other core unit. So they're somewhat unique. So I think broadly should aim for as many activations as you can fit, while still having use for them.
And 11 activations is a good benchmark.
Yeah, I think it's a good benchmark.
I think that's like I think 10's good, especially if you're bringing like a lot of meat, aka like big units that could like destroy other units quickly. So like say Bad Batch is like it's pretty hot topic in Gar. Like that's a 160 point unit that can chew through a lot of like filler units like B1s, Stormtroopers, whatever. They can contribute that, but they're also like a big target for a lot of people.
Yeah.
And I think that's like if you can justify having 10 activations, like Bad Batch is a lot. Like you have to manage them. Like once they deteriorate members, then they lose dice and they're not able to contribute as much. But if you're able to keep like that focus, if Bad Batch is your focus in your list, they can be pretty valuable. And I think that's something that you can make a decision like, oh, maybe I want Bad Batch, but I'm going to be less
So
activations.
are you talking about a sub 10 activation list with like super squads and Bad Batch?
Yeah, or just like if Bad Batch in
I'm
general.
gonna clap back. When has that seen success competitively? Like one time, like a year ago.
Yeah, I
Like
mean,
in like a couple every time he activates, and then you like out attrition your opponent. But I have not seen results, and I guess I haven't encountered them that much. But even like when they're done in other factions where they have a higher activation count, like those concepts I think are harder to pull off on the game board than they seem. Like, yeah.
I'll say I think they could theoretically be good because they certainly do like their one thing well. I think they're effectively a skew list. They're just like super powerful units, and if you get the right secondary objectives, if you get the right objectives,
Right.
I think you could win. It's just that there's a lot of like most of the objectives, activation count really matters. Most of the objectives you're having to spread out, like you have to spread out a little bit. Certainly more on some objectives than others, but I think most importantly, the margin for error on those lists are like you have zero margin for error because of the turn zero placement. Like if you misplace your unit,
Right.
you're boned. Like that's one fifth of your army might possibly where you're having to put them before your opponent has basically right after your opponent's placed like 2 units. Like you can only pass once in a row. Or you can't pass twice in a row, so it's, if you misplace that first unit, you're screwed for the whole game.
Yeah.
So I think that's probably why.
And I think when we're talking of like, it's like sort of the idea is that we're talking about like a 5-game tournament. That's probably going to happen in a 5-game tournament, that you're going to make a positioning error with a unit on turn 1. And I think the chance of making that error is heightened the more activations your opponent goes after you. There's more time. There's more units that can potentially punish an error. I guess maybe the chances don't increase, but the negatives increase. If you're playing a 9 activation Republic list, and on your last activation you push out Anakin, and it turns out that he's actually exposed more than you thought, you're gonna, against like a 12 or 13 activation Rebel list, you're gonna eat like 4 shots on him. If you had a 10 activation list and he was your last list, then you eat 3, and so on and so forth.
this has happened to me once, multiple
Yes,
times.
It happened to
week.
it happened to Tony last week. That's why I'm being a little joker right now.
Yeah. So I think if you're playing a 5-game tournament, or in a 5-game tournament or 3-game tournament, the chances that you make that error, there's always a chance. You can obviously get better at turn 1. That's like a subject for a different podcast, but that can sink your game, and therefore your chances of being undefeated at a tournament on turn 1, which is like the worst time for it to happen. Like if you make an error on turn 4, maybe you can still win. If you make a critical blunder and lose a fifth of your army on turn 1, that sucks.
Yeah.
Sometimes you can win.
Yeah.
Sometimes anything can happen. But
It's going to be a
oftentimes
big
you can't.
snow. It's going to be a really big snowball by the end of the game.
And it doesn't even need to be that unit dies. Like that's the worst case scenario. It could just be they get suppressed. Like Bad Batch, one guy was exposed, and then you get lasered by 4 suppressive weapons, and then they just never get to activate on full cylinders again.
Yeah, I don't think I've really seen a lot of like that
Yeah.
skew list that of like really super squatted up. I've tried them multiple times when the game first released, the new edition, and I felt just like I'm playing pretty like on pins and needles because it's pretty precise. It's kind of stressful because like you have a big output of damage, but you are playing with literally fire. If you just get shot once by like a land speeder or like anything at all, like if a big dice pool, like effectively your plan goes out the window, and you have to like quick on your feet, like think about what you want to do, but it's hard to pivot.
I haven't seen. Maybe I haven't been following, but I haven't seen in quite a while a big super squad low activation list with success, and I think that is more of a strategic issue than it is like a balance issue of the super squads. If that makes sense.
Do you guys like think that inherently could be like something that people could try and make successful, or is that something that is always going to be a tricky thing of like a skill list where you have to be kind of specialized in it?
I think you're going to be grinding uphill to be on the same playing field as somebody who's playing a higher activation list. So like, yes, it's possible, but you are just starting lower, and then you're working to get on the same field as somebody who plays 11 activations and has a perfect turn 1 is probably still gonna like have a lot of advantages over a person who has gets their ideal turn 1 and is playing 8 activations or something.
Yeah, I think the issue with those low activation super squad units is every list. We're talking about focus pieces. And if you're spending that many points on a squad, every unit is a focus piece, and it's very hard to focus on everything all at once and not have like support pieces. I think it's doable if you play perfectly, and you're just like a top tier player. Like it was Ollie Dyer who had won Worlds like a couple years ago that was like having some success with those types of lists, and he's obviously like an exceptional player. And I think if you're just even like an above average or even a solid player in this game state is like, I think you can mess around with super squads as a concept. I don't think they're necessarily bad.
It's
and
not
I think
the super squad
but
unit.
If you're
the concept,
but if the concept is every single one of my units is a focus piece, you're just diluting like what they're supposed to be doing.
Yep. I think that's enough about activation counts for now.
We're going to start now talking about how we incorporate units into our lists, like heroes and other generics. If anyone wants to start, go ahead.
I think we're talking about like how do you evaluate what unit to bring in what scenario, especially at this point in Legion, and definitely becoming more and more true like every month. There are lots of units in every faction that fulfill broadly similar roles, and so like, how do you pick what you want in your army? I think starting off, we should talk about heroes, because I think every Legion list has to have a hero, unless you're bringing a field commander tank, I guess. But everything needs like a commander, right? And the commanders are all heroes. We have generic, like you can bring a generic guy, but really the way that a generic officer and all the factions it's like a hero. They're just another type of named character. And so we talked earlier about picking commanders and operatives that support what your list is trying to do. Usually that's coming from a commander unit. Operatives are more solo. It's part of their design. So, yeah, I don't know. What do you guys think about picking which heroes you're bringing in the list? Like, what roles do you want them to fill and so on?
Yeah, I think like for me, for at least like Republic building, depends on like what the list I think is how going to play. So if I'm going to play with Anakin, for example, I think that's going to be a very offensive list that has going to be a melee off of round 2 or 3. So I'll probably like Anakin. I'll maybe bring like a support piece, like maybe like the Jedi Knight or like Padme or something like that. Or I can even go crazy with Ahsoka of another kind of commander that pairs well with Anakin. That's like my thought going forward of like this is going to be a very offensive list, and I'm trying to build around his archetype.
I think for me, I guess one other thing, like as I generally, when I think of heroes, I sort them into categories based on their price and their role a little bit. But like generally, there are elite heroes. Anything that's like I would say in like the 150-ish and up range with upgrades. So like General Grievous is 130, but he's often like 140 or more with like all the upgrades that you're bringing on him. And then there are like sort of mid-range heroes, which is like anything from like 100 to 150, and then there are like discount heroes is what I think of them as, which are usually your support options that are sub 100 points, and sometimes they're like fragile little operatives that run around. And I think in most of my lists, I'm bringing one at least elite operative or commander. One unit that is expensive brings a very expansive support package, and almost always brings like a high power health pool and a weapon that I can use. For Separatists, for me, that's Count Dooku or General Grievous. That's pretty much it. That what we have. Maybe like Asajj and Maul. All of those guys fit into like the, they have the ability to like both define how a list plays through their command cards, through support abilities, and also through combat abilities. So I'm usually picking one of those.
I typically like to, I used the example of Ahsoka and Sabine earlier, I tend to shy away from like the super powerful operatives, or commanders. I like to pick, as a growing up a Rebel player, I like to spread out my command cards. I like to spread out my focus pieces. I think Rebels in general are generally losing a firefight, like a straight up firefight. So you have to be a little tricky. You have to be able to outmaneuver your opponent. And what I like to do, I think my favorite Rebel list was Ahsoka, Sabine, and Clan Ren are sort of like the fast, they can go anywhere on the board, objective piece. I have Leia, who's my support piece that could clear suppression, hand out a bunch of dodges to my Rebel units with nimble. I'll throw in. I played 2 sleeper cells, and I play sleeper cells I actually play them fairly expensive even now. I put HQ uplinks on them, and just to have perfect order control when I need them, when the fight actually happens. I've had a lot of success with that. And they're sort of my punch pieces that I could play defense with to guard my home point, while Ahsoka and the Mandos are off, trying to take their weak side objective, while the sleeper cells are doing Rebel things and just dying but holding off my opponent from charging in because they don't want to be hit by 12 black dice sort of situation. And I generally like to spread my firepower to not one huge focus piece of a Vader, a Dooku, an operative Luke, but of I like to spread it between 4 or 5 units that I know I could rely on, and that way if I make a tactical error, or if someone has a really good counter to a focus piece, that I at least have some others that I could, that could win a game for me. It's the same in Republic as well.
That's a good point. Nice job, Jacob. First one you've made ever, actually.
Brother!
So, yeah, that's a great point. You don't want to be I'm bringing... Okay, this is a bad example, but I think it's illustrative. I'm bringing Dooku, Asajj, Maul. Those are all units that play very similarly. And then my opponent brings double Inquisitors. Ooh. Now all my force abilities are at risk, and that's I've just been countered by something that didn't cost my opponent very much to do. That's a horrible example in the current balance state, because I actually think that you beat the crap out of those Inquisitors. But the theory is there, that the Inquisitors are a counter to Force users. My list is all in on Force users. Perhaps over-invested, and I either need a way to deal with that counter, or I should probably reevaluate my list. That's a really bad example.
A good example would be...
It makes sense.
I think
any
list is going to be pumped to see double Inquisitors.
Okay, all right. Let's think of a different example.
I think a double AAT, where the firepower of your opponent's list is hard for you to take down with Force users, and any shot by them eliminates deflect. Because of high velocity. I think that's maybe a better example.
Or
the double AAT.
Hey, well, they just got 20 points cheaper or something. I think they might actually be good.
La-dee-da, la-dee-da.
Can every faction kind of be able to split off their firepower, in sense of power levels of having
Yeah, I think I think, yeah, just because you're bringing Count Dooku or something does not mean that you're going to have another thing that can hit like a Sledgehammer. It may not be in the Commander or Operative slot, but you'll have other things. I think on the counter thing, I guess like part of the evaluation then is that if you think your list has like a counter, and that counter is commonly played, you should consider either diversifying into different areas in your list or investing in like something that can cover that weakness.
You got to hedge your bets a little bit.
Yeah.
There was one tournament. It was I was taking like at the time I had like I called it Echo Base Offenders, which is one of my favorite lists. Where it was an Echo Base Hero Hammer because you couldn't take
One of my favorite lists to kill too.
Yeah. Well, anyway, I was doing really well on the list because the heroes are fun. They were all good. It was Han, Chewie, Luke, Leia, the whole gang. But then I came up against a double ATST list and got rocked because I had besides Chewie's bowcaster and Luke's lightsaber, I did not have an answer for armor. And so if you're gonna take like if you know that there's a strong counter to your list, you need to hedge your bets a little bit. And I think, I talked a little bit about it earlier of like, okay, this Hero Hammer list is not great against armor. Let's make sure one of my Rebel Troopers has an ion gun, or two of my Rebel Troopers have an ion gun, or make sure like this ARC Trooper has impact grenades or whatever. Like you need to have a hedge in mind if you know you're hard countered by something.
And I think this is a trap that I have fallen into as well, is that it can happen when you play often with the same local group and then you go to a tournament, because there are things that are, and that's like part of like we get back to net listing like Blaze was talking about, like if you're aware that in the broad like Legion zeitgeist, ATSTs are popular, or Mandalorians are popular, or what have you. You should be ready to go to a tournament and face those, even if your local scene doesn't say that. So, like, I think what sort of happened there for you, Jacob, is that our local scene never generally has played much armor. Armor has always existed in theory, but oftentimes when we were playing locally, it's like, why would I invest in an impact gun? I know that everybody I play with at my local group, there's a very small chance they bring armor. They're going to bring like one of them. I can just ignore it. That was more true in the old objectives. But you go to a tournament, and this will always be true. There will be ATSTs at a tournament. It's like every tournament I've ever played, I almost always play against an ATST. It is one of the coolest things in Star Wars. It's generally sort of evergreen. The role that it plays is useful. And you need a way to deal with that. Doesn't mean you need to hard counter the ATST, but you need to deal with armor. There are a lot of ways you can do that, but you can't. You shouldn't go to a 5-game tournament and be like, I'll just maybe I'll get lucky and I won't play against the ATSTs. You're going to play against them. And that goes not just for armor, but it goes for force users is the other example. People are like, I'm just going to play gun line. I'm just going to shoot. I'm just going to, maybe the force users won't make it to me. Or, that's a bad matchup. It's like you're going to play against a Jedi in a Star Wars game at a tournament, probably multiple times. But if you have no plan or strategy to deal with that, you should reevaluate your list if you're trying to be competitive. And you shouldn't take advantage of you should try and avoid taking advantage of your local players never playing something to be like, I'm going to save some points here by not bringing impact because Jacob never brings vehicles, because then you're going to regret that when you go to a tournament.
Exactly. The only player that we know that doesn't have to tech for anything, doesn't have to change his list much at all, is our friend Mark, who might be the best Shadow Collective player in the world. I'm not even say like he.
I don't know if that's true.
I think he is.
Another guy has won the world championship with Shadow Collective.
Yeah, what's Ollie done these days?
Player. And part of what I think you're getting at, maybe I'm jumping ahead of you here, but is that list generally, like, he plays a Black Sun, all Black Sun Shadow Collective list with Maul, has an answer to everything. It always has. It has tons of impact. It has Maul who can dual lightsabers. It has buses that have armor, so you can like bully lists that don't have impact. And obviously, it has Black Suns, which every single one is sort of like is a significant threat. Like it ticks all the boxes, and it always has, which I think has contributed to generally good tournament performance for Mark.
And it's so equal in how you divide your army up, because in the Black Sun, you have 6 of them. You can divide them up pretty equally. It's like 10 activations or something like that, like 10 or 11 activations.
No, he plays 12 activations.
Yeah, so that's pretty scary. So that's pretty scary. So one flank's just going to be like 3 Black Sun, and like Maul's there too, and like that's going to be very scary to go up against.
And I think that's an example too of how an all-rounder list, a list that's prepared to face anything, does not need to bring everything, if that makes sense. You don't need to bring like range 3 and 4 units and Jedis and heavies. You don't need to bring a heavy to go against a player who's playing a heavy. You can have units that fulfill multiple roles simultaneously. Black Suns are your anti-armor piece, and they can cover melee, and they can shoot at stuff. They don't do all of those things amazingly, but they do 2 of them amazingly.
You guys want to share your list that you guys have been playing that you think that kind of covers like all your bases? You can kind of like go through them like kind of piece by piece, or like rudimentary speaking, like each list or the list that you're currently playing that covers all your bases, like being an all-rounder.
Yeah, I don't know if we can do every list. That would be 4 lists. Blaze, why don't you pull up your list and let's evaluate your list from this lens.
Let's go.
Yeah. Here, I'm not really sure how to share my screen here.
The button that says share.
Yeah, have you tried the share button?
Fair
Or you
enough.
could do the leave button. That would also be pretty funny.
That would be.
I can put this in post.
Here, give me a minute.
Yeah, can we fix Blaze in post?
That I cannot do. But net listed
dested
this.
list. Yeah, neck dested.
Yeah. So.
Dude, have you used a computer ever?
Brother.
Yeah, I don't really use Tabletop Admiral on a desktop. I use
You
it
can play
basically
Tarkov 24/7. You can't make a list.
Yeah.
You could make a list on your Android phone.
Here, give me a minute.
Oh, it's not logged in on Tabletop Admiral.
Yeah, that's... Here, I'm just going to drop it in the Discord. Alright, there we go.
Killing me. There we go.
There we are. Ooh, Blaze
wait.
cooked.
Yeah, I did
This is
not.
a-
I never...
Is this a list you made yourself, or you found off the internet and then you
Hard
changed
counter
it?
this. Start countering.
This is, yeah, I found this on, I should really have credit for who I stole
this
this
is-
from.
This is not your idea. This is not Blaze's idea. This is someone.
Yeah, nope, I stole this from a guy. I'll have to figure out who.
We'll put a giant like banner, maybe make it glowing.
Yeah, and there's definitely some stuff that I would probably tweak about this, but I thought it was an interesting use of, or an attempted use of ruthless inexorable advance. Command card that I've kind of been interested in, like trying to get some value out of.
Right.
Now I'm not too sure how viable this list is in terms of like.
Well, let's evaluate it. We're here.
Yeah, for sure.
Let's dig into it.
So, yeah, I just wanted to start with like kind of describing what I think the like core like gimmick of the list is.
Sorry. Just in case somebody was listening to just the audio, can we just like briefly go over what it is?
Yeah, for sure.
The units.
Yeah, so we have 15 activations. It's the Imperial Officer, Academy trained, with a commanding control uplink. There's Director Krennic with improvised orders, strict orders. And they got Agent Callus with tenacity, Bosk with on the hunt and targeting scopes. Then 2 Stormtrooper riot squads with security droids and Imperial March. 3 shore troopers, all of the T-21B. 3 mortars. Sorry, that's shore trooper mortars. Then a squad of Imperial Death Troopers with the DTF-16. That's the cunning, or not cunning.
Compel.
Compel, yeah, geez. Compel Heavy with extra supplies. And then 2 Naked Scout Troopers. Yeah.
What are your initial thoughts on this list? What do you think how the list works? Just like looking at it.
Yeah, so if I had to guess, I haven't actually played this list yet, but I think I'm gonna give it a shot next time I play. The opening play, as I see it, is you drop Ruthless Tactics round 1. That's Callus's 3-pip. That gives units that are issued an order suppressive on something against here. I'll pull up the actual card. Here. Jeez, it is very foreign navigating Tabletop Admiral on a desktop. I usually do this on the toilet on my phone. But
yeah. I got it. Ruthless Tactics. Agent Callus's 3-pip. Issues orders to 3 units. This round, each time an allied unit with a face-up order makes a ranged attack, after that attack is resolved, the defending unit gains an observation token. Additionally, until the end of the round, each time an allied unit, so this is independent of having a face-up order, each time an allied unit declares an attack against an enemy unit that has 1 or more observation tokens, the attacking unit may spend 1 of those tokens. If it does, the attack pool gains suppressive. So there's 2 effects here. Face-up order units, which would be the 3 from the card, plus any additional ones that you got somehow, place an observation token on the enemy unit after they shoot them, and then any other unit in your army can shoot at something that's been marked with an observation token and spend that token to get suppressive.
For sure. So, I think this, I think the intent of the designer of the list was to, round 1, drop Ruthless Tactics, spread out as much suppression over your opponent's army as you can, and then follow that up with a round 2 Inexorable Advance. Inexorable Advance is a 3-pip. It's a generic 3-pip for the Imperial Officer. The effects are as follows. When a Core Trooper unit is issued an order with this card, its ranged weapons gain suppressive until the end of the round. Additionally, when an enemy unit panics this round after the effect is resolved, an allied core unit may make a speed 1 move. That's kind of the core gimmick. Spread out as much suppression as you can round 1, and then use an Execrable Advance to kind of make up for your limited mobility, either with your shore troopers or use it to throw your riot control troopers forward. I don't know.
Yeah, and you can, just going back to where we started with the podcast, you can see how this list is trying to maximize the synergy with those cards. If you notice, Callus's 3-pip just needs face-ups. It's not from the cards, so the coordinate on those 3 shore troopers basically gets you 3 additional uses of that ability on the mortar troopers. Retinue or Entourage on Krennic also gets a face up to the Death Troopers. That's another order. Callus also has Direct Core, so that's another one. So you're getting a ton of orders, and essentially, if you played this ability with Callus without any form of coordinate or extra orders, you would just get 3 observation tokens and 3 uses of suppressive. If everything works for you, which we can talk, it's probably not going to happen, but if everything works out, you're getting like 6, 7, like 8 firings of suppressive, 8 observation tokens, I should say, and then you're getting potentially 8 extra suppressive weapons, which is pretty intense. That's up to 16 extra suppression that you would, or sorry, it's up to 8 extra suppression that you may not have gotten otherwise. And it's excellent order control. Yeah.
Yeah, on round 1 too, which is pretty good for round 1 aura control.
So I think it's pretty apparent how that's a strong synergy to base a list around. That's like the appeal of the list.
How do you think you would combat, like, if you were like playing Blaze, for example, and see this across the table? Like, what do you think? Where does your mind go when you're like, how do I approach this in terms of with whatever army you have? Like, how do I approach this list?
I'm probably playing a little bit conservatively round 1, making sure that he can't do his gimmick, and then sort of waiting for my more close range or melee focused units to. He'll have some momentum because he'll just be able to like kind of move freely onto the objectives, but I'm sort of trusting that once he's spent the cards that are effectively like the super strong synergies on the round 1, round 2, that I can just like charge in there and overcome the point deficit by trying to destroy as many units as possible. It's uncomfortable, I don't know that it's the perfect strategy, and it could be uncomfortable going behind. I play a lot of like more close range focus lists. It could be uncomfortable going behind in the current state of the game, but I'd rather ensure that I do not completely panic on round 1 and 2.
Yeah, I also just want to define a little more, or Blaze, if you want to just define a little more, like the synergy that you see, or like the synergy that this list has.
Yeah. Are you talking about specifically with that like round 1 and 2 combo, or
Well, like we're just talking about like there's like a core gimmick here, which is suppression, and then using the command cards, the 3 pips that give the Imperial player benefits from suppression, right? Like Ruthless Tactics gets the suppression out there, Inexorable Advance takes advantage of that. And then we have, like, I guess I'll say what I'm thinking, which is that we then have, like, Bosk, and Krennic isn't actually bringing the cards that are relevant here, but you have Bosk, the Death Troopers, that all also contribute to suppression, even if the cards are not super based around them, like they aren't core units, or they can't get the face up, because I don't think, he doesn't have Underworld. So, like, that's a pretty, like, what I would say, like, extensive core gimmick. You have Bosk, 3 Shore Troopers, 3 Mortars, and a Death Trooper. So what? That's 9 out of your 15 activations are sort of in on this suppression gimmick. Gimmick sort of sounds like it's bad. It's not bad. It's like you have 9 units that are all in on suppression.
For sure. And in addition to the whole suppression gimmick, which honestly I do kind of think it's a gimmick, just because like super suppression heavy lists historically haven't done super well because there's so many counters to them. Like droid troopers aren't super bothered by a lot of suppression. Clones are rocking Courage 2 across basically their whole army. Combination of Dauntless and Compel. There's a ton of tech out there to mitigate suppression, is what I'm trying to.
Yeah, and now Courage 3 commanders are pretty much in every list
ubiquitous,
in a way that they wouldn't have been even just like 2 months ago.
For sure. And honestly, I wouldn't really consider this kind of list if it wasn't for that Inexorable Advance card.
Right.
just the idea of improving your action economy on that second turn, while also having like a pretty potent range 4 gun line on turn 1. I don't know, seems appealing to me.
Yeah, and so that gets back to like what Jacob was talking about, like a potential weakness of this list and how you might approach it is to say, okay, this is like a big gunline list that's going to throw a lot of suppression. I'm going to try and hide from it, or I'm going to try and like one thing is like if you hide your entire army, it's unlikely that you're taking a pretty big hindrance, but like that person will probably try and hide or get you to shoot at targets that they want you to shoot at, and hope that not hope, but know that you have essentially paid a cost of firing all of your guns and probably being fairly immobile on turn 1. An inexorable advance is like when we're talking about building a list, addresses that weakness without taking anything away from the strength of that, which is to say that like doesn't negatively, you're not paying almost anything, and then you are getting potentially multiple free moves off of doing what you already wanted to do, and that's addressing the mobility issue that a lot of like gun lines have.
And like past rounds 1 and 2 of like after you shot like range 4 and suppression, you also have like good units to help be on objectives like as a melee threat. Like Callus, the Riot Squad, I think have like capabilities to be on that point and like cover and say, oh, if Jenny's coming up, I'm like trying to get them in melee before they get onto me. So there's like kind of contingencies and other things that are stopping like someone from just rushing you like down the middle essentially.
Yeah, and I think... Oh, go ahead, Bliss.
Nothing. I was just going to say, yeah, whoever made this list did a killer job. Quality.
Well, yeah, and I think when we talk about the killer job, like the good work with this list potentially had a glaring issue, which was that it has, like, very, very weak to melee. And, like, generally close range. Like, these units are not generally good on defense. They don't have good melees. They are not mobile. They can't outrun a melee unit. They can't, like, collapse on, like, a Jedi that's gotten into your army. So it looks like the person who made this list saw that as an issue and decided to, like, invest into units that don't necessarily contribute to the strength of the list, but they shore up the weaknesses. It is not the shore troopers, unfortunately, that shore up the weakness. It is, like, the Riot Squad... the Scout Troopers, Callus, those are all trying to essentially cover the glaring melee weakness of the rest of the list.
I'll also say it's also not consistent against armor. It has a lot of critical in the list, which is good. But there's going to be a lot of attacks where the dice just don't go your way, where instead of getting like the average of 2 crits that you're kind of relying on out of a shore trooper, where you're going to get like 3 hits and you're like, ah, man, I really wish it was the average right now.
Right.
The impact is the only real way to be consistent against armor. Critical's a decent hedge, but not reliable when going up against like an armor skew type list, especially because the suppression gimmick isn't going to work against like an armor skew. And I don't think armor skews are really that popular outside of like ATST, like Tempest Force, but armor itself is popular. Well, yeah,
I think vehicle skews. I guess when we think of an armor skew, we tend to think of like big, heavy tanks. But I think there are a lot of lists that are bringing like half or more of their list is immune to suppression by nature of being a vehicle.
Like a lot of aqua droids, a lot of the land speeder for rebels, a lot of it's not the entirety of the list, but like a lot of their focus pieces might be resistant to the core gimmick. Interesting list, though. I'm excited to watch someone else play against that list.
So yeah, I don't know. I think that is like a remaining weakness of this list. That would be. I agree with Jacob that generally you shouldn't rely on critical to nuke down vehicles. Partially because it's less consistent than impact, and also because it's usually better spent on troopers, and so it's like if your short troopers generally would be better shooting into infantry and having to split off their pool to just roll dice to try and get like the average of like 2 crits against a vehicle, is potentially meaning that your original intended gimmick of suppressing trooper units, you now can't pull it off because all of your big guns are firing an ATSD desperately because you need it to go down. And then you can't pull off the turn 1 gimmick if you're blasting ATSDs on turn 1 instead with your guns.
I'm also looking at this list of like the terms of like objective play. So I'm looking at it's like, obviously, is this list like if I play what gets this list? Obviously, I'm not gonna bring them to heal because they have so many ways to get free points. Like, is this like a list that you'd be scared of playing against certain objectives or you just kind of like let it happen essentially? You know, for me, I think like bringing them to heal is kind of an obvious one that I just kind of eliminate, but everything else seems pretty. I don't know. Bounty is also scary, but like to me, bringing them heals is the obvious choice of like I don't want to play against this because it's obviously they're going to get 2 points on me every time if I don't have a way to play against it.
I wouldn't be a huge fan of playing against this list. I'd say probably on like bunker assault, where they're able to like just set up their gun line pretty efficiently, and just fire on full cylinders in the first 2 rounds. They might have issues getting to like my bunkers, but they're going to be able to shoot me with everything. But I think to like the bring them to heal thing, bring them to heal against this list is so bad that like almost every list is probably gonna need to ban bring them to heal. There are a handful of lists that could probably go toe to toe with, which is good. I think it is generally good to have your list have 1 or 2 objectives that you are so good at that your opponent can't play those, because there is advanced intel, which is most of the time your opponent sort of doesn't want you to have that. And then if you can have a primary and if you can have a secondary that's like of this category where it's like, if I'm playing this, I have a really big advantage. You are basically, if you draw that card, you are sort of forcing a ban out of your opponent, which can be really good. Or you have a chance of, if you're a red player, of guaranteeing playing that, like, which is pretty. Or not guaranteeing. You have a chance to pull that with no recourse from your opponent, which is good. I think that's like a sign of good list building.
Like I wouldn't say like I build a list around like an objective, but if I'm able to build a list that has an objective in it that I skew better against, but then on my opponent, it gives me an opportunity. It's like, all right, so this is like a second that's in my court. I can actually play it and like possibly win from that point on. It feels like bringing them to heal, especially like a Yoda list, is with people that can't give out suppression enough or mitigate suppression, is like a very good thing. It's a good caveat to have. Like I don't always expect to be bring them to heal, but knowing that it's something in my deck that I can always rely on is something that opponents have to like always ban, or if they feel confident, they can go toe to toe with it. But I feel like it's hard.
You have a good chance of like going against a list that you're gonna have a big advantage, and either your opponent is gonna let you play that, and that's gonna lead to a confident situation for you, or they're gonna have to burn a ban. So yeah, that's good, and that would be like a minor addendum to like building a list. Is you should probably, or not probably, but it's good to have an objective or 2, like a primary and a secondary, or 2 primaries. That's unlikely. I think it's generally going to be like 1 of each that you feel super good at.
Yeah, I think like breakthrough for me is like a no-go, just because I, as a Republic player, don't like splitting up the army, but also I'm like not very well versed in it enough. So like if I see that, it's going to be a very hard like uphill battle. But
yeah, and then it's like an example from like Jacob and I's last game was basically that like his list just couldn't play breakthrough against mine, and I think I had drawn like advanced intel, and sort of in that moment, that advanced intel is good, and you could have picked advanced intel or breakthrough to ban, and you banned advanced intel and played breakthrough, and that was like a horrible situation. And then it feels bad, but if you put your opponent in the scenario where they have to give you advanced intel, like that's like money. That's like one of the best cases you can have in the flop. Yeah, I am wary, Blaze, of this list's ability to handle armor, but I think otherwise it covers the bases. It has like a strong sort of lane it wants to be in, and it seems to be able to cover like its weakness of melee enough that you can probably do something with all those guns, even if you're not beating Dooku or Vader to death with riot troopers. You're probably holding him off long enough that you can keep shooting.
Hey, good list, Blaze. This is a good list.
Yeah, shout out to whoever made it.
I will make sure to I'll try to figure that out.
Yeah,
He'll figure it out. He's got it.
I'll look it up.
Yeah.
This is why I'll just say this is why I don't plagiarize my lists. I did go to journalism school. It's wrong to plagiarize, and I also want all the credit if it ends up being really good. But you guys keep doing you. I know. As in Blaze and Anthony, meta chasers. Well, Anthony, you're a bit of a meta chaser. Sometimes Blaze is just gonna chase the thing that is like probably the worst thing in New Legion.
I chase the meta, but I am horrible at the game.
Blaze willingly brought. Blaze once willingly brought a Palpatine list to a tournament when Palpatine was at his absolute worst. We don't.
Shortly before he disappeared from the game.
Yeah. He had one last moment of.
Was that a New Legion? No, that wasn't a New Legion, right?
Nah, still the old.
Okay. That was like the end of Old Legion. Because he was around. He was legal for like a couple months in New Legion. I don't think we played a tournament when he was legal.
I don't think we did.
I played a tournament where he was legal. I played against a Palpatine, Inquisitor, Range Trooper list. I pulled the string.
Yikes, dude. Yikes.
Oh, I lost that game too. I was playing Anakin Final first.
You lost that game?
Yeah.
What do you mean?
Yeah.
What were you playing? A Pathfinder, like a triple Pathfinder list or something?
No, just...
Anthony, you should not have admitted that on camera. You gotta cut that, man.
Nope.
We're losing all of our cred.
I mean, that list... just from hearing it literally fills all the things we just talked about, which is that it has a gimmick, which is that Palpatine makes the range troopers shoot a lot. The IRG and Palpatine are also melee hedges, and it worked against Anthony.
Yeah, I lost because I misplayed my turn one deployment because he played the.
Was this when you were playing the low activation Republic list that we were talking about earlier? This is full circle.
Yeah.
He did the thing that we talked about.
And his gimmick was also that Anakin is not going to be attacking first, so he nominated Anakin to be the person to... The Palpatine 3-pip was... Or the 2-pip
The 2-pip that forces him to deploy on turn one. Yep. The one good thing about Palpatine.
Yep. So I was like,
wow.
Yep, so I got outplayed.
So Anakin came onto the board and he got blasted
on
turn one. That's awesome.
So I just never play Anakin anymore. He's not very...
You don't play Anakin because Palpatine Palpatine Rage Troopers punked your ass a year ago. That's so funny.
Never again.
Some soldiers never came home from the war. Anthony came back from Montreal, but he didn't really come back.
It was a hard fought loss.
That's tough. Well, yeah, I mean... And broadly, having a good list and knowing how to play it is always going to be, I think, more important than having the strongest units at any given time. Like a list that functions well, that makes good use of its units, even if they are units that are sort of, considered to be bad, is generally going to do better than a list that just brings all of the good stuff and doesn't have any plan, or the player doesn't know how to make them work together.
Yeah, I think having a combination of because I was playing Anakin and Arcs, and I was very, very, very good, very, 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 very good. But just like that is, it's hard to pilot because you're playing with melee intensive units that require to be close range. If your opponent has range troopers that shoot at range 4 and suppressive. I do have a way to mitigate that through the 501st 3 pip that gives you Indomitable, but that's still a dice roll, and I can't always rely on that to be consistent.
Yeah. I think we should probably try and land this ship, but there is one other thing that I want to bring up that I think is important in list building, because I think it's like a somewhat common rabbit hole that people go down, which is when you're thinking about support units, so units that primarily support other things, you want to think about when is too much support. When do you have too many units that are burning their activations to support other things? And what I mean by that is, like, when you're making a list, oftentimes you can just look at your units and be like, this Kalani generates 2 aims and 2 dodges, and the T-Series generates two surges, and the Super Tactical generates an aim, and the blah, 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 blah. And they all can pile them onto each other. And then that leads to issues, first of all, on that, like, if you're spending too many points supporting units, like just spreading tokens around, there has to be some sort of end sledgehammer that can spend those tokens. And usually it actually has to be, there has to be enough focus pieces that you can spend those tokens realistically. Like if you have like a bunch of aims that are exemplared on Kalani, you need multiple units to shoot to actually use those. You can have 4 aims on Kalani, but then if all of your shots are coming from weak units or singular, like you have like a handful of large units, a lot of those tokens are going to disappear, or they're going to be spent like re-rolling white dice, when if you had diversified your threat options, you could spend them rolling reds or blacks that are generally more productive. And likewise with the dodges, if you only have one unit that you're planning on getting shot that round, they're going to have to get shot like 5 times, which is not often going to happen. It could happen with like a big tank or something, but that's important. And I also think that the other aspect of that is that you have to be realistic in what can you actually accomplish in a game with those units. And this is actually the more common thing, I think, is that people have a ton of support units, and then they play an objective where they have to split up those support units, and then they are not supporting each other in the way that they had planned the list around, and the list starts to sort of deteriorate. Like an example would be like if you have a list that requires Kalani to be funneled aims by multiple super tactical droids onto him, that necessitates that all of those guys need to be near each other. And you're like, yeah, it's range 2, that's pretty close. But that is close, but it's also like timing sensitive. So it's like if you have to activate your super tac to go charge something over here and he has left the range of Kalani would then have to like move after him and mirror his moves, which is unlikely that you're going to just magically want to migrate everything over. So you want to be realistic and be like, how many units can I have in a little ball? Because there are going to be objectives and enemy lists that are going to force you to physically separate, and there are going to be scenarios that force you to not take those support actions in a game. So the classic example I would say is Breakthrough. Essentially forces a split in your army unless you're like willing to just like forfeit 1 point, which is very risky. Unless you're like, you don't see it that often. People doing that, usually they lose because you're putting yourself down. Like if your list requires 600, 700 points of units to all be near each other, and then you have 300 points that then has to go and try and make a play, you are just betting that your units are gonna like get lucky, which is not how you consistently would win in that scenario. And that's not just Breakthrough. Breakthrough, I think, is the largest example of that. Obviously, this new objective Outflank that just came out is probably going to create scenarios like that. Recover the Research generally tends to create scenarios where you need to spread out. And you can't guarantee that you're not going to play those objectives in like a 5-game tournament. Somebody else is going to pick red, and they're going to go last, and they're going to pick Breakthrough when you're playing Republic, and you need to be ready to play against that, basically, is my point. yeah, that's all I wanted to say. I don't know if you guys have any more thoughts on that.
Yeah, I think like that's something I also kind of consider in list building too. It's like I do have to split my army at some like at one game or another. I will have to split my army basically in half. So whether or not these units can be like what sides, I'm always gonna like to me. I always have a strong side with my hero like Yoda and like power pieces, a couple arcs, and like my clone marksman and clone infantry. But my weak side's gonna be like Padme and then one arc and one clone infantry. That's like I have to split it up, but I have to make sure those are equal in the sense of like a gift for my opponent, whatever they're basing off of.
And so for me, that sounds like too weak of a side, and I'm going to punish that. Because if I'm playing a Separatist list or a Rebel list or even an Empire list that doesn't need my guys, like I have, Cad Bane, who would love to get an aim and a dodge from Kalani, but he can do okay without that, versus like Padme, the Arc, and whatever, like another clone infantry or something. They like are significantly weakened by not having access to like their support. I guess Padme isn't, but she's not contributing as much as she would. And I'm going to try and bully that side. And so, that's just like the concept, basically, is that I think designing your list around the idea that you have some component of your list that can support each other effectively on a flank is good. We don't have to get into like how many points you should invest in that, but that's just like a general idea, is that you should have a part of your list that you're comfortable with separating from the rest.
Agreed. Paul taught me that last week. Well, I knew that, but I was... Yeah. Anyway, Paul's a good player. We didn't spend enough time glazing Paul this episode. Maybe next episode.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, some of that is also that I play like Separatists who have the ability to do that often. Republic just doesn't really have the ability to do that, which can be sort of difficult from a list building perspective. I think that in our game, Jacob, you have like Bad Batch is one of those units in Republic.
Yeah, exactly.
On its own. A vehicle in Republic is like the same sort of thing. So just figure out.
I had a plan in mind. It's just the plan was not. I need to work on the plan. Maybe it wasn't enough for breakthrough in that scenario, and I think that applies for many objectives across the game. It's like you just want, and that's a list building issue as well. Like for you, I think a little bit in that thing. Republic is hard.
Yeah, Republic is super
for that specific objective. I find that breakthrough is much easier to play when you're rebels. I mean, it's one of my favorite objectives to play with my rebel lists because I know my opponents are gonna have a harder time splitting up than me generally.
Yeah.
Anyway, let's land this plane.
Yeah. Before we sign off, I found the guy that made that list.
Oh, yay!
Yeah. All right, shout out to Sean Siebert, a.k.a. Sean Death.
Sean Death.
Sean
Death.
Whoa.
And only one squad of Death Troopers.
Yeah, he brought this list to your local game store's Big Nasty Free-for-All.
Shout out
Did you say
to
Big Nasty Free-for-All 2?
Yeah.
That's sick.
Yeah, out of North Carolina somewhere.
Oh, cool.
Okay. Nice job, Sean.
Shout out.
Blaze will play it on Thursday.
Oh, yeah.
If he's able to play. We'll see. All right.
Thanks for this is our pseudo first episode, but thank you for listening and or watching. Give us any recommendations of what you might want us to talk about in the future. But this is Anthony from the Maple Syrup Mandos signing off. Stay sticky.